Hey guys, Dr. Will O'Connor here, sports scientist, endurance sports educator, and athlete. So over the weekend, I competed in a trail half marathon, and I want to show you how to analyze trail running data because it's very different than your standard road running. So let's get into TrainingPeaks and have a look at my data. Okay, here we are within my TrainingPeaks data file. What I've done is I've smoothed the data and I've removed just the temperature, and what I would also remove is my cadence because it's not really relevant here. All right, what I'm looking for is the peaks to get myself started. So within the peaks, I can see I have a little notification that I have peak heart rates. All right, so I'm going to look at those peak 1 hour heart rate, and when I select on that, it's going to highlight the area of the race. Now, generally, I would want to see my peak, any real peak heart rates coming at the end of the event. But as you'll see here, this big dip was me getting lost. Yep, that's right. I took a wrong turn, and which led to this section here. I took a lap when I got lost, and I took a lap when I got back on course. So initially I got lost and I just thought, oh, stuff it, I'm over. I'm done, I don't want to do it. I don't want to keep going anymore. And then I got my head back in the game and decided to get back on course, and I did, and luckily I hadn't gone too far out, so I moved from 3rd through and finished in 7th. So that's one of the reasons potentially why some of my peak heart rates aren't at the end. But if we have a look at my peak heart rates, some of the 1 minute one, that's at the end. That's a good sign. It's a good sign of my pacing strategy to show that I had the capacity to push all the way at the end rather than starting hard early and dying off. So that's one of the indications that I'm always looking for is where are my peaks coming? Because if we have a look at some of my peak power outputs, they are all the way at the start. So that's generally not a good sign when you're racing for almost 2 hours and you have a peak 1 minute power right at the start. Now, my peak 5 minute power also came at the start, but I had a plan there. I had a plan to take the race out fast because it started wide and then narrowed into single track. However, I'm wondering if I did overpace the start of this race. Why do I say that? Well, you can see now it is trail, so some of the power data, the pink number, is going to be a little noisy and a little lower. I'll show you that. One way you can pick up on that is this intensity factor is 0.83, so that's 83% of my threshold, where I'd want to be doing a half marathon or at least something around 1 hour to 2 hours, more like 90%. So do we do 7% lower than 90% of my threshold? That sort of shows that that my numbers aren't reading correctly, because if we have a look at heart rate, which is 177, that's pretty much just below my 180 to 185 threshold range, whereas having a number of 310 watts when my threshold's 400 or 390 to 400, and pace, well, pace on trails is totally irrelevant, and that's why I'm relying on power. But in this context, once I saw how technical the trail was, once I was out there, I completely ignored my power number and really just went off a heart rate, knowing that if I was going over 180, I was in the red and diminishing returns. So a quick way you can check it is if you go show zones, and that's going to overlay or overlay all the data on top of your zones. So you can see I'm pretty much that's one zone, 1, 2, 3, 4, zone 5, so, and then 6, 7. So I'm sort of floating between zone 4 and 5. Now, to be tapping into the zone 5 heart rate early on in a half marathon, it's not really a good sign, and that's really, really, as you can see, I'm just teetering on, if I zoom in here, once I started and I started cresting that 180 number, I really started to pull back to try and keep myself within zone 4, something I've done in training a lot. I know I can withstand a long duration of zone 4 training. So I'm just checking that, and I was checking myself consistently, continuously to to make sure that I just stayed right in that zone 4, knowing that there was going to be, I was going to be diminishing returns and really going to have to roll the dice as to whether I could withstand the rest of the race. So then, if we have a look at the rest of the race, I didn't do that real well. So I'll zoom in here, and there's this point where if I hide the rest of my data, so power and everything, you can you might not be able to see it that well, but I start going well into zone 5 heart rate. So if we, there it is, 20-minute peak heart rate, 184 average for 20 minutes. Now, the reason I did that was we had this big climb and I was just in second place and I was wanting to keep first place in sight. I had no one behind me that could see me because of the nature of the trail, and I really wanted to push in on this climb here, this big climb here. I thought it was going to be the final climb of the day, of the race, but it turns out it wasn't. I didn't know the course well enough. But after that point, we had a descent, and you can see my heart rate doesn't really come down, so I'm not able to recover on the descent. And then this next climb here, there's a few key factors that show that I have overpaced my race. One, my power. You can see the pink number is far lower than any other previous time in the race. Even some of the descents, I'm able to maintain higher power than I am on this. You can also see the trend of my heart rate trending down, which shows I'm not able to keep up the overall metabolic output, the physiological output to maintain a high heart rate, because I've overexerted myself earlier on and fatigued. So then we come into the descent. I got lost. I was able to, regather myself, and I actually took the opportunity to walk for a bit to regather myself. You can see I'm still moving a little bit. My power's still getting up there, and then get back into the race, but still at a reduced rate. So a couple of things there. I need to make sure that I avoid that 180 number within a half marathon. So by the time I began to feel the effects, let's have a look. That is around an hour 20 into the event. So on a road race, I have a greater capacity to do this because I'm looking at 1 hour 10 to 1 hour 15. But now I know if I've got anything that's going to be around an hour and a half or longer, or especially if we're looking at marathon type situations where I don't want to go over 170 in the early stages, 180 is really going to be that number for that 90 minutes to 2 hours for me. While I still had the capacity to push, I think I would have really struggled to operate at this kind of level of output if I had not actually got lost and had to take it, or sort of took a force break as it was. So that's some of the ways that you can look at your own data and try and decipher what your effort is, how you've paced your race, what you could do better in the future, what you did well within the race, and how the race really looks, and what you can then do when you're looking at your training and how you can apply your training, and what kind of time and zones and different thresholds you're going to need to work on in order to target specific events or pace events moving forward. Hope that helps. Check me out on all the social medias. Stay in touch. Subscribe if you want to. Otherwise, have a good one.